Welcome into our webinar. We'll give everyone just a couple minutes here as they're joining, but while we're waiting, we would love to hear what company you're with, what your role is, and where you're dialing in from today. So just drop that in the chat so it gives Sarah and I an idea of who all is here. While we're waiting, just quick introduction. This is going to be from the ground up to 6,500 strong between Paradox and Fontainebleau. So really excited to have you all here today. All right, quick introductions before Sarah and I hop in today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate you all spending a little time with us today. I'm honored to be here with Sarah Piper, who oversees talent acquisition at the Fontainebleau Las Vegas. I'm Allie Bonner. I'm one of our VPs of client success here at Paradox. So I've had the pleasure of working with Sarah for the last couple years as we've gone through the implementation and go live journey together. So we're here to talk about their story. It's a fun, amazing story, ups, downs, lefts, rights, all the good stuff. So really excited to talk about some of the things we're doing together and how the Fontainebleau Las Vegas continues to innovate for the future. So if you can give everyone a hello, Sarah.
Yes, hello everybody. I am so excited to be here today. Thank you, Allie and the Paradox team for hosting this lovely webinar, and I'm very excited to tell our story.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to get a slide deck pulled up just so that you all have something to view in the background as we're going through. But like I said, we're here to chat about Fontainebleau Las Vegas and really how they staffed up their team in less than 3 months with a little help from Paradox and AI and our friend Morris, which we'll get into in just a little bit. So Sarah, starting off, something I found so interesting when we started working together was that the Fontainebleau Miami had just such a strong brand, such a strong presence in the market. And Fontainebleau Las Vegas decided to build everything from the ground up. So can you talk about the approach behind that decision and how that really helped shape the hiring process for the Fontainebleau Las Vegas?
Yeah, absolutely. We were very lucky. So we started this entire journey knowing that there was a very rich legacy and strong brand recognition in Miami. And so we really had that going for us. We knew that the name Fontainebleau would sell itself. So kind of as we started to approach, building the company and of course, starting to staff our property, our strategy was really rooted in, honoring the essence of that Fontainebleau brand, but also tailoring it to fit the unique competitive market of Las Vegas. We knew that Las Vegas had a ton of candidates from a technical skill set. If you're looking for a dealer or a cook or a chef, Las Vegas is really a great place to look. That skill set runs very, very deep. But where we wanted to focus was making sure that the people with those skill sets also fit in with our culture. We didn't want to be every other strip property. We wanted to have a very unique culture. We wanted candidates that aligned with our passion, with our commitment to guest service. And so we started by defining what our culture was going to be. We identified 4 culture values. Those culture values are innovate, cultivate, collaborate, and celebrate. And once we established those 4 culture values, then we could start to build everything else. In the spirit of innovation, we said, you know what, Paradox is doing some pretty amazing things. They have AI as part of their ATS system and recruiting process, we got to look into this. We got to be on the forefront of this. AI is going to take over the world, and we got to be ready. And so we did just that. We reached out to Paradox and we were like, let's partner. Let's figure out how to do this together. We've got a very big project ahead of us, and I think together we can make it happen.
Love it, Sarah. Something you talked about through all of that was really the culture and how that helped lay the foundation for Fontainebleau, both from a brand perspective and how you're marketing to customers, and also how you're hiring. So can you tell us what Fontainebleau does to really maintain that strong culture going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we did was we wanted to again to be on the forefront of innovation, and so we decided that we were going to build out our AI, Morris, who you know very much about, and we decided that Morris was going to kind of represent us from a communication standpoint. I initially identifying, or I should say, starting that communication with our candidates. So we created Morris with the help of some partners, including Shaker and some people here on this town on this team. And we really wanted to focus on how he was going to be creative, but also provide a really warm and forward-thinking approach to talent acquisition, and in a way that would engage our candidates to truly understand and embody that culture.
Awesome. Well, if you all can see on the lower right-hand side here on the screen, that's Morris. Can you talk a little bit about the journey, Sarah, for you all to identify Morris? How did you come up with Morris, and really what all went into defining him as the AI that was supporting Fontainebleau?
Yeah, so Morris is named after our original architect in Miami, Florida, Morris Lapidus, and we wanted to pay homage to Mr. Lapidus and all the great that he did in building and starting the brand Fontainebleau Miami. And so Morris is named after him, and we call him our member experience architect. And I want to make one thing clear. A lot of people say, "Oh, he's your mascot." He is not our mascot, but he is our face.
The poodle is the mascot, right, Sarah?
That is true.
Yep.
Poodle, we have a whole poodle thing going on. But Morris really embodies our spirit. And so as we went in to start creating him, we designed him from head to toe, whether it was the way that his hair looked, the way that his suit was, his glasses, his shoes. We even put a profile together. What is his favorite drink? What are his favorite sports team? Where did he go to school? What are his hobbies? And by doing that, we were able to determine his voice. We wanted him to be very sophisticated to represent that luxury brand, but also playful and professional. So it took a lot of thought to develop him and to design him to what we wanted to be, to ensure that candidates connected with him. We didn't want him to turn anybody off. We didn't want him to be unapproachable or intimidating. We wanted candidates to feel like he was a safe space. And so we truly put a lot of effort into designing him and coming up with his voice.
Awesome, Sarah. I did notice in the chat, someone asked what ATS platform you're using. They're using Paradoxes, actually. So we have a conversation.
We are.
ATS, very AI focused, and how we can help create more conversational apply processes with our clients. And so Fontainebleau really used this throughout everything they did when they were going through the recruitment process. So we'll dive into a lot more of that here in a minute. I do want to share a little story about me. I am a big Las Vegas fan. So some people on the call know that about me. I go to Las Vegas all the time. I actually met my fiance in Las Vegas, so it's my city. I've been to Fontainebleau quite a few times, and every time I'm there, Sarah, I think about how crazy it is that Morris has helped hire every single person that's working and member that's working at the Fontainebleau. So from blackjack dealers to pastry chefs to hostess, Morris played a role in that. So you guys have such a diverse roles that you were hiring for. When we were going through the implementation, everyone at Paradox here said we're building a small city. And that's truly what it felt like. We were helping you guys navigate this small city in order to hire so many different roles. So can you talk about how you navigated hiring for those different roles and how really Fontainebleau planned and executed hiring at the scale that you did?
Absolutely. And before I even kind of dive deeper into it, I did want to say, in the beginning, we tried to think a lot about how to prepare for this. And so we decided, you know what, let's break it down in terms of what we anticipate. And ultimately we anticipated about 80,000 applications. And keep in mind that's for 6,500 roles, 80,000 applications. So in and of itself, we were overwhelmed by that number.
Yeah.
How are we going to do it? How are we going to communicate with this many people without having to build a team of over 100 people? Fun fact here, we were blown away. We did not receive 80,000 applications. We actually received 300,000 applications.
Just
So
insane, especially
with
for the team you had at the time.
100%. So with 80,000 being an overwhelming number, you can certainly imagine how it ended up being with 300,000. I mean, I'm sure everybody on this call can relate. To hire 300,000 or to hire 6,500 people with 300,000 applications, the first thing going through your mind is like, how do you comb through that many applications and that many resumes? How do you communicate with that many people? And trust me, we wondered the same thing. And by using Paradox, we were able to do it. We were able to communicate through Morris, through the AI functionality, all hours of the night. So while we're all sleeping in bed, Morris is chatting and engaging with our applicants. They're able to ask him questions. What positions are available? What does your PTO policy look like? How can I learn more about your benefits program? All of that Morris did for us. And you know what, Allie, 41% of the communication that Morris had with candidates occurred after working hours.
I love it. We love to say Morris is our 24/7 experience architect manager. So working around the clock when everybody else, us humans need our sleep, our rest, to have a meal or two. So that's just testament. I mean, 41% of those communications taking place outside of normal business hours when the rest of your team is off is just truly incredible. Sarah, another thing you mentioned, the candidate experience is critical. It's especially
Yeah,
critical when you have a luxury brand. Your
for
customers
sure.
also your candidates. So you had a lot of additional layers to why your candidate experience was so critical. Can you talk about how you guys had such a seamless candidate experience and how you really collected candidate feedback along the way to make sure that candidates felt it was as seamless as it was?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'm gonna separate the question and answer it in two different ways. The first
That's
thing I want to talk about is the candidate experience overall and how we were able to truly um, make it so that it was top of the line. First and foremost, I mentioned Morris, kind of speaking with the candidate 24/7. And so the candidates weren't waiting for somebody on a talent acquisition team to come into the office the next day. They weren't waiting over the weekend. They were able to get real-time answers. They were able to apply in such an efficient manner. And so that first and foremost was a great way to initiate the positive candidate experience that we wanted to do. But we also utilized Morris to ask each candidate a series of pre-screening questions that we developed for every single job position that we were hiring for that were very, very unique. And right then and up there, Morris was able to weed out any candidate that was not a good match for the role. And here at the Fontainebleau, you're going to hear us use the term fit and match. We refer to fit as cultural fit. Do they meet our culture? And then we refer to match as technical ability. And so we were able to knock off quite a few applicants right off the top just because they didn't pass those pre-screening questions. That took a lot of administrative burden off of our talent acquisition team. And we programmed Morris to know what those right answers would be so that he could just streamline that process. That happened regardless of a TA person putting their hands in the system. And then we set up rejection notices on a 72-hour delay so that if they didn't pass those pre-screening questions, they were notified 72 hours later and not immediately, because we certainly don't want them to think we didn't consider their resume, right away. So we did that. The other thing is we were able to utilize Morris for scheduling efficiency. And how we did that was by inputting what we wanted the schedule to look like. And Morris took it from there and said, hey, listen, I understand your schedule. I understand your capacities. Trust me, I will schedule these candidates for interviews or culture auditions or whatever it may be, the way that best suits your business. And he certainly did. And so that really took a big administrative burden off as well. And then lastly, communication. What candidates want communication. They want transparency. They want to know in the moment, do I move on with my life or do I actually have a shot here? And so Morris allowed us to continue real-time communication, not only from the application process, but also from once your application is submitted and reviewed, what are the next steps? Where do I go from here? What should I wait to is there anything coming from an onboarding perspective? Throughout the entire process of the candidate journey, Morris was remaining in communication with all of our candidates.
Really quick,
So that
Sarah, before you hop on to the second part of that question.
Yeah, sure.
There was a question in the chat, which I think tied into what you just mentioned around interview scheduling. They asked, how does a recruiting team maintain communication and coordinate interviews logistically? Wow, which it's true. It's crazy, especially at the number that they saw being, essentially a startup. You were in startup mode. You were a smaller team, a very lean team that had to support this. So I think something great to call out about Morris is like, not only does Morris help schedule that initial interview and really own all the hassle of the scheduling, but he can handle any of the reschedules or the cancellations.
Absolutely.
The user or candidate perspective. So there's no need for any human to intervene. Like Morris can handle all of that within a few seconds, which I think really helped your team when it came to interview scheduling.
Absolutely. Once you inform Morris of what your schedule should look like, he takes it from there. So all you have to do as a human on a talent acquisition or a talent acquisition leader is say, I want to conduct interviews Monday through Friday, 9 to noon in 20-minute time slots with a capacity of 1 candidate and 3 interviewers, or maybe it's 5 candidates and 5 interviewers, or a panel, or a group, or a single, or a virtual interview, or a phone interview.
You guys did
Morris,
it all.
We did it all. And Morris is smart enough to know, I'm going to interact with this candidate and I'm going to determine a time and an interview location that is mutually beneficial for both parties. He handled it all for us.
Amazing. So Sarah, one thing I wanted to ask you was making the process inclusive, important, and taken into consideration as the Fontainebleau was working through outlining the entire recruitment process.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Allie, and just kind of clarify a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Wanted to know if making the recruiting process inclusive was important to Fontainebleau and something that was taken into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say inclusive, are you referring to members or applicants, or are you referring to like inclusive of hiring managers? And
definitely on the applicant side, because I think something that was really interesting throughout the process was from step 1, you guys took into consideration languages and being able to
for sure
communicate in English and Spanish.
Absolutely. Yes, and thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure I was fully understanding. Yes, that was actually extremely important to us. So here in Las Vegas, we have a very large Hispanic community. We do hire a lot of Spanish speakers, and we also hire a lot of Mandarin and Cantonese speakers. And so that became very important to us. How are we communicating with those that may not have or utilize English as their first language? And so we learned that through Morris, if you type to Morris in your native language, he gets it. He's like, okay, I understand what you're doing. I'm going to reply back to you in that same language. And as the recruiter, let's say I, as the recruiter, don't speak Spanish. I see it in my native language while the candidate sees it in their native language, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morris
And
is elegant, fun, multilingual. He's everything that we
he's
need.
everything. And Allie, I wanted to circle back on a question that you had asked about how we engage candidates upon the conclusion of the process.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of alluded to surveys, and that is one thing that really excited me about Paradox and the use of Morris is the ability to go back and survey our candidates about their experience. Um, as I mentioned, we had 300,000 applicants. Of that, 52% of them took a survey at the end of their application process. And of those 52% that took the survey, I think it was 93% of them expressed a satisfaction rating, meaning that they enjoyed the process, that they thought that it was efficient, that they felt engaged. And they also had the ability, if they didn't feel engaged or if they didn't like the process, to kind of type free form on what exactly they didn't like. So we've used that data over a significant period of time to be able to determine how we make fixes and improve for the future. And right now, as we are getting out of what we call volume hiring for opening and into day-to-day operations, we are leveraging that data constantly to be able to make better decisions.
That's awesome, Sarah, especially because usually for surveys with email, we typically see about a 10% response rate. So seeing a 52% survey completion is extremely high against that benchmark. And the reason being is because Fontainebleau was able to deliver that both SMS and or email, really in whichever was the preferred candidate communication preference. So as the candidates were going through the application, they were able to say what method they prefer to be communicated with. And that's how Morris continued to communicate with them throughout the entire process. So amazing to see that high number of a survey completion.
Yeah, we were very happy with that.
It's awesome. So Sarah, maybe backing up a little bit, going back to the beginning, a crazy time, if you can remember, you all had to hire around 6,500 members in under 3 months. You conducted more hiring events than I can count and probably more than any of our other clients. So can you walk us through a little bit about what a typical hiring workflow looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for calling it hiring event. Here at the Fontainebleau, we do not talk about job fairs. We have talent recruitment hiring events, and I appreciate you utilizing that term as well. Um, we wow, just thinking back of all the hiring events we did, we knew that we were not going to be able to hire 6,500 people with individual interviews, like on a day-to-day basis. We knew that we had to have these mass hiring events. And when I tell you about these events, Allie, we went all out. We had entertainment. We had in some cases we had butlers. In some cases we had celebrities show up. I don't know how we got so lucky, but we put
Your
a
Las
lot
Vegas
of
experience.
effort. I mean, Las Vegas. What can I tell you? We put a lot of effort into our hiring events. And here's one thing that is so cool. Paradox has an event planning module for hiring events. So like previously I had used Indeed, they kind of have this event kind of functionality in their system, but it is nowhere near as intuitive as the Paradox module. And so we were able to leverage this module to reach out to the masses, and through the help of our recruitment marketing firm Shaker, get the word out that we were having these events, and boy, did people show up. They were huge. And again, Morris was able to, we programmed Morris to be able to communicate with our candidates while keeping event hiring in mind. Event hiring and day-to-day hiring are two very different things. So we were able to program Morris to be relevant to that type of event.
Awesome. So I think probably something most people don't realize that are on this webinar right now is that you are conducting both hiring events and interviews long before the Fontainebleau property was even open or even finished being built. So you were actually conducting these hiring events at an offsite talent center in Las Vegas. I still remember receiving the call from your team because you needed to have a last minute change of hiring events for the entire month of November because of Formula One coming in and
Yes.
taking over Las Vegas. So can you talk about how the team navigated that unexpected change and how Morris really helped support you in that?
Absolutely. And to paint the picture for everybody on the call, we had a really amazing talent center on an off-strip property, not too far down the street from the construction zone. We had done a ton of work to set up this beautiful talent center, but it just so happened to be right around the corner from where the F1, the first year of F1 would be taking place. And the city itself didn't really know what to expect. This was the very first year. We knew it was going to be crazy, but we didn't know how crazy. And 1 week prior to November 1st, we were told the leasing company that owned our talent center had rented out our parking spaces to F1, and therefore we would have no parking for the entire month of November. And as you can imagine, for a talent center, people are coming and driving there, and there was really no way to get around the no parking issue. So we had 1 week to decide what we were going to do. Were we going to stay and kind of, I don't know, offer Uber tickets or bus passes, or were we going to move? And the only solution at the time was to move. And so we ended operation. I can't remember. It was in the middle of the week, maybe a Thursday. We were fully in full operation all day that day. And then we closed at 5, packed up the talent center, moved overnight, and opened the next morning at 9 a.m. in a whole new location. And that includes computers and badging systems and filing cabinets and paperwork and anything you can think of that you need as part of recruitment from a supply perspective. We worked through the night, but what was the most nerve-wracking piece of all of this is, how do we tell our 300,000 candidates, hey, don't come to this location anymore. You got to go to a new location. And November was set to be our highest number of onboarding. Our highest number of candidates that would be onboarding was set to be in November in preparation for our December 13th opening. So it was timing. Perfect timing. So we leveraged Morris. We worked with the Paradox team and said, listen, how are we going to get to all of these people? What are we going to say? How do we say it to keep the positivity and not seem like it's a negative? And that's where we leveraged Paradox and Morris, and he was able to communicate with all applicants to say, hey, listen, we moved. Don't show up at the old place, show up at the new place. He sent reminders. He did it all in real time. And so when we opened up our doors that next day at 9 a.m., we had no issue.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So throughout the whole process, were you or anyone at the Fontainebleau and your team afraid of using Morris since he's AI and worried that was going to really take away from the human touch of the recruitment experience?
So I think anytime you are considering AI, that's probably one of the top questions that you're asking yourself is this the right decision? Are we taking away the human impact? Are we removing that human touch and actually making this process more frustrating? And ultimately, the answer was not at all. So what Morris helped us do was stay organized. We still had in-person culture auditions and in-person interviews, and we still had face-to-face candidate interactions. And none of that changed. The only thing that changed was he was able to help us organize the top candidates. And essentially, if a candidate didn't qualify for the role, he helped us make sure that we weren't wasting our time. And I know that can be kind of harsh when you're thinking about talent acquisition. Nobody truly is wasting your time, but when you have 300,000 applications come in, you really do have to be smart in the way in which you organize human interaction with those candidates. So no, it ended up being great. The people that we wanted to truly engage with face to face, we were able to.
That's awesome. We always say at Paradox, your 24/7 recruiting assistant takes away from the BS, which is the boring stuff. So that's
Yeah,
the
it's
admin
it,
burden. Exactly. And so we were able to really help lift that off the Fontainebleau's team and have Morris really handle those administrative burden tasks and frees up your people to spend more time with people, which is the whole point of recruiting.
absolutely. And to kind of go back from the beginning of this when we talked about our culture, just as just as much as we wanted our candidates to be a culture fit for us, we also wanted to show our candidates that we truly valued compassion and friendliness and transparency and communication. And so Morris was able to, it really worked both ways. Morris was able to make sure that that happened both ways.
Awesome. Well, I have one last question for you, Sarah. Fontainebleau Las Vegas has achieved so much in such a short amount of time. It's crazy. It's been a year since the property has been open. So now you're really transitioning from that additional onboarding of opening the property to what normal everyday hiring is going to look like moving forward. So how does the Fontainebleau Las Vegas team plan to really innovate and evolve your hiring strategy to just maintain those staffing levels that you have now?
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it earlier. We are done with volume hiring. We got through the 6,500 people in a matter of 3 months, and then through normal attrition, we are continuing to hire. And as business builds, we're adding more headcount to our compendiums. And so we are shifting from volume hiring into day-to-day operations, day-to-day hiring operations. And so one of the things that we recently did was we changed the way in which we built our candidate journeys. Our candidate journeys before, again, were to help us get through massive amounts of applications. And now that we aren't seeing the same amount of applications as we did pre-opening, we want the candidate journey to look a little bit different. We also want to put some of the responsibility back on the hiring managers. So in the beginning, our talent acquisition team took a lot of that burden, and now we want to push some of that back to hiring managers. So we're utilizing the system so that managers can get in and do a lot of the work that we were previously doing. The other piece too is contextual AI. Right now, we've programmed Morris with our standard questions and answers. I believe it's about 400 questions that Morris has the ability to respond to. But what we would really like to see as we start to move forward is Morris learning from conversations and figuring out his own way to respond. And that's called contextual AI, and Paradox has that ability. And so I'm really excited in 2025 to partner with Paradox to really launch this contextual AI piece.
Awesome. Two quick things around the hiring manager, the transition from recruitment team owning the interviews to now hiring manager. we support clients that have both, but you were one of the first to go through that transition from the recruitment team owning the interviews to hiring managers. And I will say that's something that we can support. So there's many clients where they keep it just all recruitment team owning interviews, and then many other clients where it's the hiring managers. So Paradox, whether you're on our conversational ATS or we're integrated with your ATS, we really are able to handle either experience or even both experiences if you need both. And then the contextual care and AI piece, Sarah, I love that you brought that up. Morris is continuing to get smarter each and every day, but the contextual AI is able to really make it more conversational. And that's the goal here at Paradox, and what we're really looking to achieve with our clients is how we can have more engaging conversations with our candidates, have more informed candidates coming into the first interview. So really excited to work on that project with you and the rest of the team this year.
Thank you so much, Allie. You guys have been so great to work with.
Thank you.
You know, people are reaching out to me all the time to talk about this, to talk about AI as relative to talent acquisition, to talk about how we're doing it. I am really enjoying talking to people about this because it's so new and people are just so curious about how it works. So I welcome any and all questions. I'm available, and hope I can be of assistance to anybody considering the system.